Welcome, everybody. My name is Antonio Macconi. I'm the director of Trieste Next Science Festival, an event that is taking place, that has been taking place in Trieste since 2012. And I'm very happy to be here tonight. And so first of all, I would like to thank IILA for welcoming me here, and mostly ICGEB for inviting me to join this final leg of the Science and the City Italy tour, let's call it this way. We started in June this year in Parma during the Green Week Festival of Sustainability. Then we moved on to Trieste Next, of course, Galileo Festival of Innovation and Technology in Padova, the Festival of Science in Bergamo, the Science Festival in Rome, and tonight this is the final event. We'll be talking about biomass fueling the future. So first of all, I would like to invite to the table our speakers tonight. Dr. Vittorio Venturi, Scientific Coordinator and Group Leader for Bacteriology at ICGEB Trieste, Italy, and Syed Yazdani, Coordinator and Advanced Bioenergy Research and Group Leader in Microbial Engineering at ICGEB New Delhi, India. He flew all the way from India to join us tonight. So thank you very much for being with us on this occasion. Before we start, we have more or less 50 minutes for our discussion. I would like to greet also all the people that are joining us via online streaming. Not only the people who are with us tonight in Rome, but also the people who are connected from basically all over Latin America and the rest of the world. So in case you need to ask anything, I can read the questions, and I'll be mostly happy to share your idea, reflections or suggestions with our speakers. And secondly, I would like to thank our translators from English to Spanish, Daniela and Serena. And mostly, I would like to thank the Ministry for University and Research, the Italian Ministry for University and Research, for supporting this Science and the City Italy tour, and also Rai Radio 3 and Rai Friuli Venezia Giulia, the media partners to this event. So tonight, we're talking about biomass fuel in the future. I will start with Shams Yazdani, because I would like him to start introducing the topic. It's a topic of relevant importance, of paramount importance for everybody, considering the challenges that we are facing nowadays in this century. That is climate change, the need to reduce fuel related, like fossil fuels related emissions. Why do we need biofuels, and why are they usually considered as carbon neutral? This is a very general question to start introducing the topic. And again, thank you.
So let me start by thanking ICGEB and the organizer of Science and City program to give me this opportunity. I had been actually the listener of this program for many years and got this opportunity to actually participate as a speaker. So my greetings to all the dignitaries, especially from India and Latin America, from Italy. So thank you very much to be here. I think it's an extremely important topic. We all are having a crisis. We all agree that we are facing a crisis. And that's why we have this Paris Convention, and we have just finished the COP meeting in Indonesia, and the next meeting is probably going to discuss even more deeply about it. So, there's a global warming happening because of this carbon dioxide getting added in the environment. It's almost 35 billion tons of carbon dioxide that are added in the environment due to the human activities. And almost 3/4 of them are coming from the fossil fuel. So obviously there is a huge need and demand to replace this fossil fuel with something which is more sustainable, which is more carbon neutral, which are more environment friendly. And that is where the topic of today is, that we need to find a solution of replacement of the fossil fuel. What is the best one that can replace the fossil fuels? And I don't want to get into the details of which country is emitting how much carbon dioxide, but effect is on global basis. So every person on this earth is getting impacted. So biofuel is a great alternative to the fossil fuel, mainly because it is carbon neutral. The reason being, fossil fuels are something that is being buried millions of years ago inside the earth, and we are digging it. So obviously we're adding new carbon dioxide in the environment. But if we use some of the feedstock that are being generated in our own lifetime, and they are being used as a fuels, they're released in the environment as a carbon dioxide, and they are captured back by the plant. So for example, the biofuel is one such example, that agricultural, for example, plants, they can capture the carbon dioxide. We can use those agricultural products as biofuels, and then we release the carbon dioxide in the environment by the usage of biofuel in the petrol, as a petrol or diesel in the car, and then they are captured back from the environment. So obviously there is a carbon neutral. So in our own life cycle, and within a year, we can see that carbon dioxide is getting recycled by the use of biofuel. So I think this is the best alternative at this moment that we have, is the as a in place of the fossil fuels.
It's actually quite interesting, because before we started the event, we were mentioning, Professor Venturi mentioned that in 1905, 1906, when the first diesel engine was designed, it was actually designed to be used with peanut oil, and then they moved on to diesel. Yeah. So in a way, biofuels were always in the picture. It's not that recent of a discovery, so we learned that biofuels have many benefits in terms of emissions reduction, fuel safety, and rural economic development, and we'll further discuss this later on. But I'm sure there are also some concerns and challenges. Dr. Venturi, what are the major concerns? I know that there is some debate regarding the use of land for, shall we use land for energy instead of using it for crops and for food, considering also that it's quite recent that we reached the 8 billion milestone in our population, in the world population. So can you present a few of the challenges that biofuels may be related to? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. And I also like to express my real thank you to the organizers of this event, my ICGEB colleagues, and also other people. And it's a great pleasure to be here. And I think I also extend my gratitude to and my hellos to all the distinguished people here. But I just want to make the point that I've been in science for 30 years now, and you know, if you go to a scientist 30 years ago, we didn't want to talk to anybody. We were just stuck in our experiments. So events like this, science has changed a lot. Most institutes now have a communications office. So it is very important that we talk to the general public, to people who do different jobs, talk to what we do and how we do it and what are our concerns and where are we trying to go. I think it's very important. So initiatives like Science in the City are, I think, extremely important and have to hopefully continue in the future. So the concerns are obviously there. As Antonio said, the Food and Agriculture Organization has predicted that in 2050 we will be 10 billion people. And going with that, we predict also that we have to make 60% more food than we're doing today. And we have to do it in a much more sustainable way. because energy is becoming expensive and fossil fuels are reducing. So we have, without the problem of biofuels, we have an extremely big challenge ahead of us. So the crops that are used for biofuels are mainly sugarcane, corn, and wheat. Let's say the three main ones. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shams. These are also food crops. These are crops that we need to eat, and to eat humans and to eat animals that we also then eat. So obviously there's a concern there. You know, we are taking land away for food, but we have many more people to feed. So we will talk later about how we're gonna, agriculture needs to enter a new revolution. You know, we've had a big industrial revolution. We now need another one. And we can talk about that later, how we, I'm very optimistic how we can face this big challenge. Also, there is an issue which we are concerned, which is the monoculture. You know, growing these crops extensively, year after year after year after year, is very challenging for a soil. The soil gets impoverished. It's very important to rotate the kind of crops we grow in order to keep the soil fertile, to keep the microorganisms diverse in the soil. So we need to be careful with biofuels not to extensively grow the same crops year after year after year. Also, these crops, when you grow extensively year after year, you increase the pressure for pests. So there will be more pests coming. You know, if you rotate, if you change, there is less probability to have pathogens. You know, just we have the coronavirus. Plants have coronavirus, their own viruses and their own pathogens, which we need to be very careful to control as well. So there's also a concern there. You know, monoculture will increase the increased disease, plant diseases, and obviously fertilizer use, water use. These are also very big challenges we have, which we will talk later. So, you know, biofuels and food, you need it, the bottom, the common denominator is challenging, having agriculture be much more sustainable, much more productive, and keeping diseases under control. So these are the kind of challenges we have, which are big, but I'm optimistic that that we can, scientists can help us resolve these issues.
Thank you. We have to share. Maybe you can hear me without. Okay, sorry. So we've been talking about biofuels and first generation biofuels, and now there's the focus is mostly on second generation biofuels. So can you please share with us what are the main differences between first generation biofuels and second generation biofuels, and also what are the main challenges that we are facing with second generation biofuels?
So basically, you know, all the biofuels that are currently available in the market, they are first generation biofuels. So they are coming from the food source. So for example, if you're talking about ethanol, in fact, in Brazil and US is the largest manufacturer of bioethanol. So Brazil produces ethanol from sugarcane. So it's juice coming from the sugarcane. And US produces bioethanol from starch. So they use cornstarch basically to make ethanol. So both of them are basically, although is a very good alternative, which it has given to the fossil fuel, but still they are not the best alternative as far as the poor countries are concerned. Like country like India cannot afford first generation biofuels because it has to feed 1.3 billion people as well. So we need to go beyond it so that there's no competition, there's no debate of food versus fuel. And that's where the second generation biofuels comes into the picture. So the major difference is that we use the non-edible portion of the plant, which is basically, we call them as a biomass for making fuel. So non-edible portion, for example, if you're talking about the rice and the wheat and the sugar cane, so whenever the grains are out from the rice and the wheat, or the juice are out, so the leftover part of the plant is biomass. We call them as a lignocellulosic biomass, because they are basically mainly cell wall of the plant. And the lignocellulose has interest in us because it's basically a polymer of sugar. So it has a lignin, which is a phenolic polymer, while cellulose and hemicellulose, which are present, they are sugar polymer. So they are still sugar polymers. So although they are not starch or sucrose, but they are still sugar polymers. So if we are able to hydrolyze them, if we are able to convert them into what we call it as a fermentable sugar, then we will be able to make fuel out of it. But of course, the challenge is that the cellulose and hemicellulose, they are not as easy to convert into monomeric sugar as starch. Starch, for example, when we chew, our saliva has amylase enzyme and glucoamylase that can quickly convert the starch into glucose. But cellulose, for example, those humans have to sit hours and hours, and then they are able to digest those cellulose. So they're not easy. These are a structural polymer nature has given as a strength to the plant, so that they are able to withstand this harsh temperature and climate condition. They can't run away like us in the room. So these are basically structural polymer. So although they are sugar polymer, but they are difficult to digest, they are difficult to hydrolyze, and therefore the challenges begin from there itself.
Okay. I have a very probably stupid question, but I'm very curious about it. Would any engine work, like available engines in the market, work with biofuels, or do we need to adjust in order to for them to be working? Like I'm talking about first, second, and then third generation biofuels.
Right. So most of the fuels that we are using at this moment, I know the situation in India, and I'm sure similar situation happens elsewhere. They are blended with biofuels, but blended with biofuels. So for example, the petrol, they are blended with around 10% or 15%. There's no problem. There's no need to change regular engine. If you are blending ethanol by 20% to the normal petrol, or biodiesel by 20% to the diesel, there's no need to change. But if you're going beyond that, if your in-house capability exceeds the production level, for example, in India at this moment, we are able to blend 10%. So until 10, we have a capability to produce 10% so far. And if you want to reach, in fact, our Honorable Prime Minister announced just a couple of months back that India achieved the target, actually, which it was supposed to achieve by 2025, 10% blending of ethanol in all the petrol, in all the petrol. But now it wants to achieve 20% blending by 2025. So obviously, we need to have a feedstock available. We need to have a technologies available. We need to have, those kind of companies to take up those challenges available, so that we can reach to this 20% mark.
Perfect. And one more questions before we move on to Dr. Venturi. What are the levels of production? Still talking about second generation biofuels, but what are the levels of production and the future goals that we have set on a global level? I think we may have also a slide to show here.
Yeah. So basically, at this moment in India, we are thinking about producing around 1 billion liter of biofuels every year, so that I'm sure the similar way every country can think about producing, rather shifting from first generation to second generation, because obviously as the population exceeds, we need the food to be available to feed the people, not use them. If any country has access, they can ship the food to the poorer countries rather than using them for the fuels. So we are very keen to see if the technologies are available for using those non-food portion of the plant to convert it into the fuels, biomass. And the same thing, talking about future aspects, because we know that even the biomass will become limited in the future. So we have to think about the further scope or feedstock for the fuel. That's where third generation biofuel comes into the picture. And we look beyond land. So for example, still the second generation, we are talking about the residues, agricultural residues or forestry residues that are coming from the land. But if that becomes limited, we need to move towards the water sources, especially marine. So most of the countries have a huge marine coastal area. So can we use brackish water or marine water to produce algal biomass? And algae is an excellent feedstock because they can accumulate almost half of their body as an oil. And those oil can be converted into biodiesel easily. So those are the future scope that we have to keep thinking about it.
Thank you very much. Of course, if you have any questions here or for the people who's connected online, we're mostly happy to start answering those questions as soon as we get them. So, Dr. Venturi, we've been talking about, you mentioned the relationship between agriculture and biomass. And I would like you to further develop on what are the available technologies that we have at hand and the challenges that they present.
Okay, okay. Just to before I answer the question, also to follow from Shams, I look the agriculture side of things, and waste biomass is obviously waste, but it's also important for agriculture because waste biomass, we all know that if we leave it to the soil, it will be degraded and mineralized, and so give back to the soil a lot of vital elements. Okay, so if we take that away into biofuels, obviously we need to be careful. We need to keep our soil vital in other ways. Okay, so going to Antonio's point and what I said earlier, the big challenge ahead, that we need to make so much more food in a sustainable way, and we are lucky that scientists have found incredible new technologies that will help us face this challenge. We need in the future to make plant varieties or crop varieties, which will need to be more resistant to pests, so to diseases, fungal diseases, viral diseases, bacterial diseases. And also more importantly, in the topic of today, we need to make crops and plants which are more resistant to abiotic stresses. When abiotic, I mean high temperature, lack of water, high salt. And these are the effects of climate change. We know that we're getting much more land, which is salty, dry, and we have higher temperatures. So we need to make plant varieties that at the moment cannot really grow very well in these environments to grow well. What I mean are wheat, our rice, our corn. And as I said, luckily enough, today we have a fantastic technology, which is called genome editing, which has actually been discovered recently. And the two professors who discovered actually got the Nobel Prize. So this now allows us, in a very elegant and fast and extremely cheap. And what is important also from an ICGEB point of view, this is a very cheap technology that anybody can use worldwide. You don't need high-tech machinery of hundreds of thousands of dollars and high-tech equipment. So we can very quickly go to a genome of a plant and change it to some extent in order to bring maybe new genes or change the genetic feature of that plant so it can grow in high temperature, it can grow in less water, it can grow in high salt. So this is, in my view, the most promising technology we have today. And it can be used for any living organism, but in my view, the biggest effects we will see will be in plant research. The other technology that will help us is called smart agriculture. We're now seeing the artificial intelligence is reaching all parts of our life, and is also reaching agriculture. So now farmers, there are technologies out there that are telling farmers, that are measuring for farmers, for example, temperature, humidity, soil health. So we have robotics, we have drones, we have satellites. So the farmer is able to get so much information of the area that they grow their crop. so they can know which crop is best to plant at that year, how much, when to irrigate, when to use the fertilizer, the pesticide. So optimize growth and make it so much more efficient and so much more sustainable. So these are two incredible technologies that are making a difference today. And there are other, it's a puzzle that we need. Lots of different scientists need to work together. And also, what I would also like to discuss, and that is that we are learning so much about our life in the soil. 99% of life on Earth is something we cannot see, and they're microbes. And now we're learning, thanks to DNA sequencing. DNA sequencing has really made a revolution in our work. Now we can sequence DNA so quickly, so cheaply. For me, it was a dream 25 years ago to think what we can do today. So we can learn about microbial life in the soil, and that's the richest microbial life there is on the planet. And the soil is where everything starts from. The food chain starts from the soil. And if the soil is not alive and it does not have a rich microbial life, we cannot grow our plants. If we cannot grow our plants, animals cannot eat, and the whole food chain stops. So another technology which I'm working in especially is understanding soil health through microbiology, because plants need microbes to grow. They need to associate microbes to grow. So if we learn about this microbiology, this is a third technology which will make a difference. We can use it. We can exploit this microbiology in order to grow our plants better and without adding, nowadays farmers put a lot of fertilizer and pesticides. And by understanding microbiology and making plants grow better, we can not take these away, or at least reduce the use of these chemicals. So these are three very important technologies which will help us to grow more plants for food, more biomass for the biofuel. So these are, in my view, the ones that will make the biggest difference in the future of agriculture.
So we've been mentioning the topic of plant and microbiome, and can you discuss and present a little bit more, like in detail,
Sure.
The technology and how what could be its contribution to biofuels and the development?
So the word microbiome, I'm sure many of you heard of it. Now we hear it in the news, is the total microbial life. And when I say microbial life, I mean, so microbiology is all life that we cannot see with our naked eye. So you need a lens, it's called microbial. So that we're talking about bacteria, fungi, viruses, some small worms, archaea, and the total microbial life in a particular niche is called the microbiome. So for example, we have in our body the mouth oral microbiome, we have our respiratory microbiome, and most important, our gut microbiome. So in the gut, we have 2 kilograms of microbes, bacteria, viruses, some fungi, some archaea that live with us. And this has to be viewed as an external organ to our body. So there's no human on Earth without this microbiome. Some humans have a better microbiome than others, thanks to maybe a healthier lifestyle and a healthier diet. And this external organ is so important for us that it helps our immune system digest our food, provides some compounds that we need in our body. So it does a lot of different things. Now, plants have the same. They have their own mouth microbiome, and they have their own intestine, which is the soil. For example, 2 millimeters of the soil closest to the root is called the rhizosphere microbiome. And this is the intestine of plants, if we make a parallelism. And so what myself and many other scientists around the world are studying this microbiome of plants, because this microbiome, this microbial life that associates with plants, helps plants to get nutrients from the soil, helps plants, for example, they fix nitrogen from the air. 80% of the air is nitrogen, and plants need a lot of nitrogen. So they fix nitrogen from the air and give it to the plant. They produce hormones, this microbiome, in an altruistic way, because they get food from the plant. So in exchange, they make hormones so the roots can grow better, and they help keep pathogens away. So this microbiome, this microbial life, is very complex. There's a lot of different species of bacteria and fungi living together. What is extremely fascinating that this is like a multicellular organism which has evolved for millions and millions of years. Plants were here much more before us. So there are billions of years of evolution of these communities which share their work and live together. So we have to understand them and which are the components, how they grow together, so we can then, most of them, luckily we can grow them in the lab. So what then I do in my lab, once I've studied them by, thanks to DNA sequencing, I can sequence, and also then I can isolate specific microbes, grow them. We can grow them in fermenters, thousands of liters fermenters, and then we can give them to plants. In this case, I'm not talking about genetically modification. We just increase the number of the good microbes that the plant needs. So we can, for example, coat the seeds with these microbes, get them to the soil. There's lots of different ways we can bring back these microbes to soil, so we can keep soil healthy. Plants can grow very well and associate with microbes, and so we can use less agrochemicals. So this is one of the three major technologies I talk about that I'm involved in, and also because recently the cost of fertilizers and chemicals is just like our electricity bills, and our fuel is skyrocketing. They're going up in price like crazy. So companies that are making agrochemicals are now getting very interested in alternatives. So I'm getting phone calls, which I like, because I'm getting phone calls from desperate people. So the wallet is shaking. So we can get some money in the lab to do more work and get these technologies out. So yeah.
I am a communicator, so I need to ask stupid questions. We started. We're talking about the food chain basically, and also Shams Yazdani has been talking about the non-edible part of crops. One of the major issues that we are facing in our century is also the topic of food waste and the amount of processed food that is being thrown away from our table. Is there any possible application and to transform food waste into biofuels? So at the very end of the food chain.
In fact, there are many types of food waste. So of course, for example, the kitchen waste, there are two kinds of kitchen waste. One could be as simple as the used cooked oil, which are now being made effort to convert it into biodiesel. So that is something which is more easier. The other kitchen wastes are like the peels of different vegetables. They are like similar to biomass. So the technology that we use for converting biomass to fuel can be used to convert those kitchen waste also to the fuel. So should we talk about the technology to convert biomass, because that's something that will address your question as well. So basically, if you look at the biomass, it's basically a lignocellulosic biomass. So it's a very hard shell of lignin that covers the cellulose portion or hemicellulose portion. So to extract or to reach to cellulose and hemicellulose, we have to remove lignin. And that is normally done at this moment through thermochemical process. It's more of a chemical engineering problem. However, there are some enzymes like lacases and peroxidases that can chew the lignin, but the process is very slow. So the quick way to remove lignin is to do a thermochemical delignification, and that allows cellulose and hemicellulose to get exposed. And that's where the next step comes, where enzymes play into the role. And we have many of the enzymes. In fact, Vittorio mentioned the microbes. So fungal enzymes are the best enzymes known, because fungi actually secretes enzyme. So these are saprophytes, fungi. So they try to search for their sugar polymer as a carbon source, and searching process, they secrete enzymes outside, and that enzyme chew the cellulose, and it is because it is secreted outside, we can make technology to grow that fungus in a very large quantity in the fermenter and extract enzymes. So we throw away the fungus, and then we have a secreted enzyme outside that can cleave those cellulose and hemicellulose into glucose. And that glucose can be fermented by yeast to ethanol. And the process seems very simple, though it's very difficult. It's because cellulase and hemicellulase are expensive. In fact, that's one of the key technological area that we at ICGEB New Delhi work upon, to ensure that these enzymes are actually available at a cheaper price. There are very limited companies which sell cellulases and hemicellulases for second generation biofuels. And that's the innovation that we do at ICGEB New Delhi. We engineer fungus so that it can produce more efficient enzyme, more and more higher quantity of enzymes at a cheaper price to make overall cost of second generation biofuels lesser.
We have a couple of questions from our online audience. I'll start with Alberto Ceccarelli. Well, he congratulates the both of you for your interesting argument, and he mentions about like his work in an Italian company that recycles food waste to produce pellet. With this new type of pellet, we are developing energy production solutions with pyrogasification technologies. Can you comment on that?
Absolutely.
And also explain what pyrogasification technologies are.
Right. So basically, so pyrolysis come gasification. So if you treat any biomass at a very high temperature and pressure, so they get converted into synthetic gas, basically syngas we call them, which can be used as an energy source to run your engine or generator, etc. So that's something which is a very high temperature, very high pressure technology, and you don't need any biological mechanism to convert it. That's a rather quick way, just that the cost becomes higher sometime because your infrastructure, your system for pyrolysis is the capital cost and all that usually is very high. But if there are certain companies who are able to make it cost effective, that's very good. The alternative way is to do the biological treatment and try to see if those pellets are converted through the enzymatic and fermentation route to fuel like ethanol. So both the processes are being explored by different technology.
Okay, thank you. There's also another question. I think this one would be for Vittorio Venturi. There's no name, so it's an anonymous question, but a very interesting question to me. That is, this person would like you to comment upon the regionality of the use of biofuels. You've been talking about agriculture, and specifically the question mentions how like Africa is one of the smallest contributors in terms of climate change, but at the same time one of the continents, or probably the continents that is hit the hardest in terms of global warming. So they would like to comment on you to comment on this topic.
This is a very good point of regionality. So as Antonio says, there are, we don't have to name them, but there are a few countries which are generating the biggest problem, the biggest contribution to climate change, and Africa is definitely the biggest victim, right, of climate change, and they are the least contributors. So also in terms of biofuels, for biofuels we need to grow crops efficiently. So there is a regionality growth of crops. So at the moment, Africa will not benefit from this technology as much as other countries, and this is obviously a concern. And not only with biofuels, but also with food crops. So we definitely have to look at Africa, because they now will have the biggest abiotic stresses. So the highest temperatures, the lack of water, and also the soil health is not very good in many parts of Africa. So regionality is a very big issue in agriculture related to biofuels or to food. And this needs special attention from all the scientific community. And also the recent COP meeting this was highlighted how Africa is the biggest victim and how the so-called biggest producer should contribute to these effects in Africa and how we can solve them. And I think science will be the biggest challenge. So we need to work also, not as scientists working in Italy and in many other countries of the world, must not only look at the problems of our countries, but really must look at the problems of growing crops in Africa and try to mitigate this and to grow crops in Africa in a very, very well and in a sustainable way. You know, if you look at some of the figures of how many tons per hectare of corn or wheat or rice that are harvested in the United States or in Europe or in also India and China that are making such incredible progress in the last 10, 15 years. And you look at the harvests in some of the countries in Africa, it's embarrassing. We cannot afford to go on like this. We need to get the harvests in Africa to go up so they can make biofuels and they can make and be more sustainable in food. So regionality is a big issue, and ICGEB is looking at this very carefully. That's why we exist, to train scientists and to try and to bring technologies like we've discussed to countries that need to use them in order to increase their harvests. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So going back to our questions, we've been talking about first and second generations biofuels. We are now facing third generation biofuels. How is the technology improving, and what the scenario is? What kind of scenario are we facing for the future?
So at this moment, we are trying to ensure that second generation biofuels becomes affordable, accessible, because that seems reality at this moment. We have a huge surplus of biomass. In India itself, there are 500 million tons of biomass produced every year, and around 350 million tons are being wasted, sometimes being burnt. In fact, if you were in New Delhi at this time, you will feel the smoke coming from the north. So those burning issues, and there are many other countries who do that. So at this moment, we are trying to find a quick solution for not only burning, but also trying to see if the countries like India become self-sufficient in energy, because it imports almost 85 to 90% of its energy need from outside. So how do we become self-sufficient, self-sustainable? So with both of these issues, we can probably find a solution. So there are surplus of biomass that are being burnt at this moment. We're trying to see if that can be converted into fuels, which is called second generation biofuel. And technology is evolving. In fact, government is very seriously supporting different technologies to mature. At ICGEB also, government has almost given a decade of funding to do research on developing second generation biofuel technologies, and the key outcome of those technologies, enzymes that we have scaled up to 30,000 liter fermenter. And at this moment, we are discussing and dealing with different companies to take it to the commercial level. And there are already 4 second generation commercial plants that are going to be built up in India by next year or so, which will produce 30,000 liter of ethanol every year, each plant. And each plant is going 30,000 liter per day of ethanol. And each plant is going to use 4 to 5 tons of enzymes every day. So obviously it's a huge, requirement of these kind of enzymes, these kind of technologies, which genetic engineering and biotechnology can provide to the society. Now, as I said, while we are trying to find a current solution to the problem, we also have to think about the future. So these are going to be limited. Soon there will be a competition for the biomass, not only for the biofuels. We're also thinking about the bioplastics. There have been many biochemicals that might come from the biomass itself. So there will be a competition of biomass. So we need to find some other feedstock. And the third generation algae biofuel is going to be the future. We have to parallelly keep investing in the research and development to make this technology mature. This is at this moment not very effective because the density of algae is not very high. It's very unpredictable when it will produce the oil and when it will not. How will you get the marine water in a sustainable way so that the algal biomass can be grown in a larger quantity? How will you maintain the genetically engineered algal cells in the environment outside, because many times you have to do genetic engineering to ensure that you're getting enough of the fuels from algae. So these are the challenges that we have to address in the near future so that we keep going in a sustainable way far in time.
Since we've been talking about algae, there's a question for you from Eduardo Puca. What about the use of microalgae for biofuel production or for biohydrogen production? I've heard about the microalgae division in New Delhi's ICGEB facilities. Is there any investigation of these in your labs? And thank you for your great explanations.
Okay, yeah. So as I said, it's very important to work, and that's one of the research area at ICGEB New Delhi to develop algal biofuels. So there are two group leaders at ICGEB New Delhi who specifically work on this area. So one tries to see if they can do a genetic engineering so that algae can sequester more carbon dioxide. So algae is like a small plant, so you can grow either in the raceway pond or you can go on the photobioreactor. So it can take the carbon dioxide. It can, of course, grow much faster than plants. So it's very useful, cell. And if we do genetic engineering, more and more carbon dioxide can be sequestered and the cells will grow faster and more lipid or oil can be intracellularly produced. And those are the research that are going on. And there's a huge omics of algae group, which looks at the genetics or genomics, trying to understand the behavior, because many times you have to work with the natural algal isolates because of its ability to produce high quantity of lipid. But unless you understand the genetics, physiology of it, we will not be able to do any further improvement. So there's a whole team of scientists who try to understand the genomics, transcriptomics, metabolomics of these algae. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I have one. Actually, we are going to our final part of the event because we have 60 minutes and we have 5 minutes left. So I would like to ask Dr. Venturi, you mentioned about the contribution of microbiology to sustainability in agriculture. Can you present us, of course, briefly, the technological aspect and what are the future scenarios for this?
So yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, so the future scenarios is how we're going to use this. The biggest challenge is we're getting a lot of information. We are scientists, we're acquiring a lot of data. In fact, this is a characteristic of science at the moment, the new technology. We're producing more data than we can, at such a speed that we can analyze. So we're getting a lot of data on which microbes are present where, but what we need to understand is what they're doing and which ones are the main actors. So we are also teaming up with computational biologists that can make networks and systems biology that can understand networks of communities of microbes. So the ultimate goal is where we're working, trying to understand which are the hubs, which are the microbes that are even if we look in a community, let's say, let me do a simple comparison. If we look at airports, right? If we take a big area of geographical area, there are some airports that are interacting with a lot of other airports. So if those airports shut down, the whole network of communication will shut down, right? Whereas if we have some peripheral airports, if we shut down those, the effect on the whole communication network will not have a big effect. So our microbial community is very similar. So there are some microbes that are at the center of the communities, having a lot of positive interactions with a lot of other microbes. So we need to understand which are those microbes. And then going back to the question of Antonio, once we've understand them, which are those microbes, we have to understand how to grow them in the lab. First of all, we have to make sure they're safe for humans and for plants. So we have to do a lot of experiments to make sure we can grow them. Are they safe for humans? Are they safe for plants? And then we have to find a way to put them back and use them in order to grow our plants better. So I briefly mentioned coating the seeds. We can spray them, you know, just like we spray pesticides. We can put them, as we call them, furrow inoculation. So, you know, when we put the seed in the soil, before we put the seed, we inoculate some of these microbes. So then the seed germinates, and the roots immediately are coming in close contact with a high number of the microbes that they like. So we give them an advantage. It's a bit like us getting probiotics. So Antonio, to look at your question, is the challenge is more understanding which ones we need to use rather than applying them. The actual technologies of applying them, of course, there are some commercial secrets. There are a lot of companies trying to how we grow them, how we formulate them. Because when you grow bacteria, for example, to high volumes, and we need to concentrate them, and then we need to find a way to make a product here in a bottle to give to the farmer that the farmer will dilute and use, but the bacteria there or the fungus have to stay alive. So there are some technologies, tricks that we need to know, but the technologies is not very high tech. We really need to understand which are the ones that we can use, are they safe, and how to grow them. So I'm very optimistic that we can really exploit this microbiology in agriculture.
Thank you very much. We have a few minutes left for questions from the audience. So in case you want to ask anything, please raise your hand. Our speakers are available to answer any kind of doubt or comment upon your suggestions. Otherwise, we have a couple of questions left from our own online audience. This is why I'm always checking my mobile phone. It's not because I'm chatting or anything. It's just I'm checking questions. So let's go. Do you have a question? No. Okay. Okay. So, Dr. Venturi, I would like you to. We've been mentioning the topic of education and training. That is very important, considering also ICGEB's mission. Can you give us some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very important point, and it's a big mission of ICGEB, and you know, and it's a very thin line between research and education, you know, because if you do research, can you also do education? I believe we can, and I'm so proud to work for ICGEB because we put this at the front of our mission. So to give you an example, in my laboratory now, I have students that are spending periods of 3 to 6 months. They're from Burundi, from Cambodia, from Tunisia, from China, from India. So everything we've been talking about here, we need to make sure that these technologies, simple or not simple, need to also be, these technologies also have to reach the less developed world. So I really believe that we need, the people in the countries need to do this, to do the technology themselves. You know, there are a lot of funding agencies that fund projects, for example, in richer countries or developed countries, so that they can be brought to developing countries. That is fine. That also works. I don't, you know, and it's a strategy that is maybe quicker, but I really believe that what ICGEB is a long-term solution, looking further on. So we need to train scientists, we need to grow scientists from developing countries so that they can go back and do the research in their own countries. Because, you know, at the end of the day, even if we look at Italy, the funding in research, and I talk to this all the time, the funding of the kind of research I do, there's very little funds in Italy. If you look at funds in Italy, it would be cancer research, cardiovascular research, all topics which are close to our daily life that we have problems with. There's a very little funding to do research that affects outside our country or outside, say, our geographical region. So yeah, thank you for your question, Antonio. I think this is why I really love working in ICGEB, because we're looking quite a few years down the road, bringing science and scientists to developing countries so they can start doing research that is important for them. So definitely, and I hope that, you know, it's also true that if we look at laboratories around the world, even if they're not ICGEB, my colleagues working in the States, working in Europe, they also host scientific labs are international, but we look very much at the south of the world. So, and I think it's very important. Not a quick solution, but definitely in the long term, it's very important. Yeah. I hope you agree.
We have a question here, please. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you to all of you for this wonderful and enlightening presentation. No, it's a very general question. In many countries, this is a very novel issue. So if you assume that you have convinced the people who have to make decisions and they want to take seriously this, what would you foresee that are the main obstacles that they would find if they want to implement a politic on this issue, and what would be your suggestion? That's one. And the second question is almost as general as the first. Is could you comment on when you make this kind of presentation? Almost always you will find public opinion is they bring up the issue of genetic intervention of foods and things like that. So I don't know if you can also have a word or a comment on that issue. Thank you very much.
First question for you, Shams.
Yeah. So I think there are both ways. One is, while there are a lot of supports from both government and the private to keep doing the research and develop technologies to a maturation level so that industry is willing to take it, but also policy. You know, if government makes the right policy, if it says that we need to make technologies, we need to have replacement of the fossil fuel to this is mandatory, then it's a push for the scientific communities to make those kind of technologies. So while this kind of awareness program is there to sensitize both public and diplomats and the government that it is important, I think the effort has to come from all direction to push this, this to a reality. So it has to be both. So funding needs to continue so that we have a solid research and technology in our hand. Also, policy needs to be more, environment friendly, and in that, probably together we can achieve. And it has to be regional as well as global approach. I mean, that's what I feel.
I can briefly touch upon the second. Obviously, is a very hot topic that has been debated. You know, genetically modified plants have been now used since the late 80s. I mean, there are countries in the United States, there are some crops that 90% are genetically modified. And they're mainly genetically modified for really two main characters. One is resistant to insects, some insect pests, and the other is resistance to herbicides. They're more genetically modified coming out. So they're absolutely safe. There are no real clear evidence that even though billions of people have been exposed to them. So, you know, it's a long debated topic. My comment to that is, we scientists, if we create genetically modified plants, we also need to do the research and the data to show that they're safe and they can be used. Once all these experiments are in place, we can use them. This is my opinion. Just like when we use a drug to cure us, if you think that we use a lot of medicines, right? These medicines have been tested, they've been discovered by scientists or invented in some cases, some are, and then they are tested, they've undergone some series of testing, and then we're using just so. Obviously, you know, the topic here is obviously environmental release. We're putting plants in the environment which are genetically modified, but so far they've been shown that they're safe and they have a lot of advantages. Obviously, there are some issues that we need to look at, like monoculture, like high use of herbicides, but overall, it is something that we need to look at carefully, especially Europe, because if you look at the world, the biggest difficulty of implementing these plans is Europe, and Europe is having an effect also. What happens in Europe has also an effect, mainly in Africa. So Europe has a very strong position, and we still don't understand why. We scientists are talking to the European governments, and we will really like to see a bit of easing and making these crops more available, because they have so many benefits.
Are there any other contributions? If you can join me with the microphone. Thank you.
So, okay, thanks for your invitation. Was really great for me. So I was wondering if there is an opportunity for the smallholders or for the farmers that are in development countries to produce biofuels in the future, because I think that actually the process is very costly and is not accessible for the development countries. So we can find a way to establish technologies for involve the smallholders in this process. Thank you.
Who wants to, please, Shams?
It's very important question, actually. So let me address you in a two ways. So one is, it has to become a farmer-friendly technology, because, you know, these biomass, they are not very dense biomass. You can't carry it too far from farmers. So eventually, technology has to mature to a level that, you know, it actually within 4 to 5 kilometers, you have a prototype available where a biofuel is produced, you know. So at this moment, we can say that it is not mature to that level, because still the commercial plants are thought to be, you know, the volume, these are basically low value, high volume product, you know, these biofuels, that's what we call it. So as the high volume you produce, the lower the cost it will be. So at this moment, the technology hasn't matured to a level that it is actually located within every 5 kilometer radius, you have one of them, but it has to mature in that. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable in the future. It has to mature to a level that the farmers are actually able to produce, a group of farmers together are able to produce, able to run, able to function that biofuel plants. It will happen.
Anything else? I would say we covered, of course, we could not get a deep knowledge and debate on the topic today, because it's so vast. But I would like to thank our speakers for helping us understanding the challenges and the opportunities that we are facing. And mostly, I would like to thank IILA and ICGEB for helping us getting to know these specific topics that are very relevant for our daily life. Mostly since this, as we started saying that this is the final event of the Science and the City Festival, I personally would like to thank again ICGEB, because these events are extremely important to show the general audience how science can contribute to our progress as a society, and not only as an economy. So thanks again to ICGEB for providing us with this opportunity. Thanks everybody here tonight, and to all the people who are following us online. And if you want to since we had to select the questions actually. If you want to ask anything to our speakers, I'm sure that you can get in touch with ICGEB and I'll pass it on to our speakers. So again, thank you to Dr. Venturi, thanks to Dr. Yazdani for flying here with us today. So thanks again, Ila, for welcoming us. Thank you.